Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of Season 1 of the cartoon Tiny Toon Adventures. And before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this series, specifically the first season of this show, I would like to give a special shout out to Mark for requesting this review. And if there's another TV show, film, or topic that you would personally like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both will be in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, this is a show that I do have a fair amount of nostalgia for. I grew up watching this show on Fox Kids or on reruns on other networks. I would say I didn't see every single episode, but I did watch a fair amount of them. And this was a fun but kind of flawed experience revisiting this show. It was one of those things where, yeah, I did have some enjoyment from the show. I did get a kick out of some of the episodes and some of the gags and some of the other things that make this show endearing. But there were other elements of it that definitely didn't hold up as well as I honestly expected them to. And the fact that it is a show that is geared toward a lot younger audiences really does affect its ability to have rewatchability factor consistently for older fans. It's one of those things where it kind of does have moments where it's a little too kiddie, if you get my drift. Um, but I still would say it's a good show, and I would recommend it, especially if you're a fan of Looney Tunes, because it's a nice companion to the Looney Tune shorts, and it also, despite its origins, which in a lot of ways was just trying to be baby Looney Tunes or Looney Tunes when they were kids, it really does manage to carve its own niche. And a lot of people involved with this show creatively would go on to do some remarkable work later on in their careers in the realm of animation. Tom Rugger, Paul Dini, you might recognize that name. Bruce Timm. Uh, they would go on to do work for Batman the Animated Series and a whole bunch of other projects. So it's one of those shows that, despite the fact that it's in a lot of ways been overshadowed by shows that came after or were spin-offs of it, like Animaniacs or Pinky and the Brain, it's still a show that has its place in history. And I do feel that it's a series that absolutely deserves a little more spotlight just for that alone. Just the fact that it was the first cartoon that Steven Spielberg and his company Amblin produced. It was the first time that you really had a cartoon series that dealt with this kind of IP that was handled in a way where it wasn't just a cheap cash grab. Tiny Toon Adventures, there were there was honestly a lot of effort and passion put into the show in terms of creating the characters and finding the right voice cast and getting a very talented team of writers on there and trying to tap into what was popular and what was current when it comes to trending topics and other fads. And in a lot of ways it was ahead of its time in terms of trying to tap into the zeitgeist, so to speak. Um, and that does kind of date the show a little bit at times. There are some episodes that really do feel like they are relics from the 90s, but it's a big part of why the show became such a runaway hit with kids and even the adults who happened to catch an episode or two when it initially aired. I would say my favorite episodes of the show are the ones where it's really leaning hard into the meta humor, the meta writing, where it's poking fun at cartoon logic or uh, the Looney Tunes or making references to various different aspects of pop culture or breaking the fourth wall and talking about the writers. That's really where this series shines, is when it takes risks and it goes off the beaten path, so to speak, when it comes to a show like this aimed for kids. Now, before I get around to just giving some short thoughts on the various different episodes of this first season, I would like to do a bit of a rundown on the multitude of just incredibly talented people involved with this show. You have the creator, Alan Smart. You have Tom Rugger, who is a major driving force with the show. And you have, in all honesty, a tremendous voice cast. You've got Charlie Adler, who voiced Buster Bunny. John Kassir, who voiced the Crypt Keeper. He also did Buster for 4 episodes. I think he filled in for Charlie at one point. Tress MacNeille, she voiced Babs Bunny. You have Joe Alaskey, voiced Plucky Duck. Don Messick is Hampton Pig. Frank Welker, longtime, well-known veteran in the voiceover industry, is Furball. Cree Summer is Amira. Maurice LaMarche is Dizzy Devil. Danny Cooksey as Montana Max. Rob Paulsen as Arnold the Pitbull. Kath Soucie as Little Sneezer. Gail Matthius as Shirley the Loon. You got Candy Milo, who voiced Sweetie. Jim Cummings, he voiced a Papa Flea in a few episodes. And what I really like about this voice cast is that they all really did bring their own take on these iconic characters and made them sound like they're not just cheap imitations of the inspirations for these characters. Like, it's Buster Bunny doesn't sound exactly like Bugs Bunny. Charlie gave Buster a very distinct, a different sound to him and a different attitude, and just a totally unique approach to that character. Tress MacNeille is her own creation as Babs Bunny, and honestly, I would say I was really more impressed by and entertained by Tress MacNeille as Babs than necessarily Charlie Adler. And it's not really the fault of Charlie Adler. It's just some of the writing for Buster was just not as consistently funny. Like, Tress MacNeille was just given a lot of opportunities to just be wild, zany, just oddball, and just genuinely a lot of fun to watch. Same thing goes for Joe Alaskey's Plucky Duck. Um, and the rest of the cast is fine too, like Don Messick. He definitely handles the role of Hampton J. Pig really well. Um, Cree Summer, I honestly do not like the character of Elmira, and the voice of that character is nails on a chalkboard for me. But that's the point. She's supposed to be a pain, and Cree Summer definitely nailed the assignment when it comes to that. And Danny Cooksey is, in my opinion, probably the most underrated voice actor in this cast is Montana Max. He was the only member of the voice cast at the time who was a kid compared to all these other adults. And I just love his take on Montana Max. I thought he was just dastardly and devilish and just a blast to listen to, especially when he got really manic and over the top. But yeah, just in a lot of ways, a really special and really great voice cast. And you could just tell that they genuinely loved the assignment, loved playing these characters, and that goes a long way. There's no sleeping on the job here. There's no half-assed performances by this voice cast. And now that I talked about the voice cast, there's a few other things I want to mention. I want to mention just kind of a brief sort of overview of like the animation in general. For the most part, I think the animation, when you get an episode that has a budget behind it and doesn't get pennies to work with, it's a really nice looking show, especially for the time, with some theatrical transitions and direction and pans and zooms and usage of the various different backdrops in an episode. And the show also features a full orchestra score by Bruce Broughton, who did the score for the Monster Squad, among other things. And you can't talk about the music for this show without talking about the unbelievably catchy uh, theme song. Like the opening theme song for this cartoon is right up there to me as one of the most catchy themes for any show. Um, it's just one of those things where it is an absolute earworm. Now, now I'm going to talk about the episodes of season 1. Now, there's 65 episodes, so I'm not really going to go super in depth on these episodes. I'm just going to say the name, maybe mention the director and the writer, maybe provide a brief little synopsis of what happened in the episode. If there's a particular episode or short that I really want to discuss a little bit more in depth, I will. But there's going to be a lot of them where I'm just kind of, I'm going to do a quick uh, um, overview. Like I'm just gonna go through them fairly quickly, because there's a lot of shorts and there's a lot of episodes of this first season that I don't really have a whole lot to say about. The pilot episode, though, I definitely do have a fair amount of things to say. The pilot episode is called "The Looney Beginning." It was aired on CBS as a little special. I believe it was like a CBS special in prime time. And this is a really clever pilot episode. It's very meta. It talks about the process behind creating the show from the perspective of this struggling animator and writer who's under a lot of pressure to create a new show from his boss. And he starts creating the characters of the Tiny Toons, but he doesn't have faith in them, so he still tosses them in the trash along with all these other failed ideas that he had. But the Tiny Toons are such a strong concept and a strong series of characters, especially Buster and Babs, that they come to life anyway and basically create the show on their own. And I thought that was really unique and really interesting. And there's just a lot of fun to be had with this pilot episode in terms of how it shows the creation of Acme Acres, how it shows the various different ways all these other new characters are created for the show, and why there are villains and who is placed where in Acme Acres, and the Acme University, and the scenes where the new Tiny Toons they interact with the old Looney Tunes. And yeah, it was just a really fun, creative, witty, and very clever pilot episode. Definitely one of the better episodes of the series and of the first season is the pilot episode. Episode 2 is a Star Wars parody. This is one called Quack and the Quarks, directed by Art Vitello, featuring a script by Tom Minton. This one deals with Plucky, Duck, and pals. They try to save a planet called Planet X from this Dark Vader wannabe called Duck Vader. And there's a lot of Star Wars references and other sci-fi movie parodies that are thrown in there. And it's watchable, but it's not one of my favorites. In fact, I think the Muppet Babies version of Star Wars was more creative and more entertaining, but it was fine. But definitely not one of my favorites. Episode 3 is when they introduced a very common format for the show, which is a episode that would have multiple shorts in it. So it became this kind of smorgasbord of animated segments. And this one's called The Wheel of Comedy. And they actually did this more than once. It's directed by Art Vitello, features writing by Paul Dini, Tom Minton, Gordon Bresick, and Charles Howell. And of course, the wraparound deals with Buster and Babs spinning a wheel to determine which characters are going to star in each segment. You have 3 shorts: Devil Doggy, Optical Intrusion, Win, Lose, or Kaplooey. And out of all of these shorts, the best one is Optical Intrusion. In fact, Optical Intrusion is one of my favorite shorts out of the entire series. I love this short. Deals with Furball, who finds this pair of defective magnetic 3D glasses that were thrown out from a 3D glasses factory because they literally drew things towards you like a magnet. And so it leads to a lot of really fun animation and physical comedy and just a lot of creative ways for things to just fly a Furball and for him to try to avoid them and at the same time try to get the glasses off his face. And it's just a really fun short. And it's just this short to me is like a prime example of Tiny Toons at its best, where it's a lot of the same classic Looney Tunes style and gags, but with its own spin on things. The other two, pretty forgettable. Devil Doggy's really, I guess, only memorable because it's the first appearance of Elmira. But other than that, there's not much to it. Dizzy Devil was definitely the best part of it because I can't stand Elmira as a character. Win, Lose, or Kaplooey, just a very, very short segment with Babs and Plucky and Montana Max who are on a game show. Buster's just finds out that Max is cheating, and then they turn the tables on him. And that's really it. Episode 4 is called Test Stressed. Directed by Rich Aarons. This features a script by Jim Reardon, Stephen Langford, Paul Dini, and Sherry Stoner. This one, other than To Bleep or Not to Bleep, which deals with foul mouth and has a pretty ballsy plot for a kid's cartoon. Another one that's pretty run of the mill and not really that special. Just kind of barely watchable. Never Too Late to Loon. That one has Plucky, who's bugging Shirley the Loon because he wants to pass his math test. Tries to get her to channel the spirit of Einstein into him. She doesn't want to do it, but he keeps bugging her. She finally does, and of course, shocker, Einstein wasn't that good at math, so Plucky fails his test. Little Sneezer is the first appearance of this Little Sneezer character, which I absolutely hate. And it's another Furball short that doesn't work because it tries to paint Furball as an antagonist, and Furball does not work as an antagonist. He works as a protagonist only, and a sympathetic one, like in Optical Intrusion or the Flea episode. Other than that, like Furball does not work in any other capacity, but they keep trying to make him Sylvester the Cat, and it doesn't work because Sylvester the Cat, there was never any sympathy with him. Like there was never any poor Sylvester. But with Furball, there is a lot of that, and it seems like it's intentional. So when you try to make him a villain, it just doesn't work. It was fun to see Furball interact with Sylvester the Cat, though. I will give the short some credit for that uh, um, pairing, but it's short lived because then you get the little sneezer who's a little shit, if you ask me. More like little shitter because God, I hate that character. Just speaks in just a sugary sweet toothache fashion, and then the whole gag is that he just sneezes loudly and destroys things. But yeah, to bleep or not to bleep is definitely the best one out of this episode. Because you got foul mouth, he's trying to ask Shirley out on a date, but he has a problem. He cusses like a sailor, and they actually show it with bleeps. You don't actually hear him swear, but you can get the drift of what he's saying. And Buster tries to help him, and eventually everything backfires. Foulmouth is still swearing by the end of it. Yeah, that one is worth watching for the Foulmouth short. Everything else, not so much. Episode 5 is called The Buster Bunny Bunch, directed by Art Leonardi, featuring writing by Gordon Bressick, Charles Howell, Len Jansen, and Sherry Stoner. And this has 3 more shorts: Buffed Bunny, Squish, and Born to Be Riled. Out of all of them, I would say Born to Be Riled is the best one, mainly because of Tress MacNeille's just amazing impressions of the other tunes that are featured in that episode. Because she does these impressions of Dizzy and Plucky and Fifi and Shirley, and they're all pissed at Babs, and they then decide to get back at Babs by impersonating her. Buff Bunny was a short one, but it was okay, mainly because of the dynamic between Babs and Buster. Buster thinks that Babs is swooning over a billboard with a muscular guy on it, but it actually turns out to be carrot cake. And throughout the episode, he's trying to impress her with muscle mass that he doesn't gain in a natural way. Episode 6 is called Her Wacky Highness, directed by Ken Boyer, featuring writing by Sherry Stoner. This one, it was fun. It definitely had a lot of creativity, imagination when it comes to the Wacky Land scenes. I don't know if it really needed to be its own standalone episode, but compared to a lot of standalone episodes, this is definitely one of the better ones. Babs, she's being punished for being a class clown. She doesn't understand, so she runs off to Wacky Land. She winds up becoming queen of Wacky Land, but eventually she even gets tired of Wacky Land's shtick and everybody having no self-control, but she can't escape, so it's up to her friends to save her. And yeah, it was a fun watch just to see Wacky Land and Go Go Dodo and all of that. Episode 7, Hollywood Plucky. This is one of my all-time favorite episodes of the show. This is one I'm also super nostalgic for because I think it's the first episode of the show I ever saw when I was a kid. It's directed by Art Vitello, featuring a script by Sherry Stoner. And this one's a treat. If you're a film fan, this is fantastic because there's so many different references to so many different movies, so many different movie stars. And it's just a fun episode, a fun premise with a ton of potential that, for the most part, is fully realized throughout the episode. Where you have Hampton and Plucky, they're going to Hollywood because Plucky wants to get his script of the Plucky Duck story optioned and made by this director named I think his name is like, it's not Cecil B. DeMille, but I think it's Gordon DeMille. Gordon B. DeMille. I think that's who the guy's name is. So he wants to be a movie star. He wants the story of his life to be this big blockbuster hit movie. So he goes to Hollywood. Buster and Babs were supposed to join in, but he sabotaged them and lied to them and told them to wait at this bus stop for a bus that never came. Hampton and Plucky wind up in Hollywood. Plucky and Hampton wind up working at this restaurant for free because the manager tricks them into thinking that they're shooting scenes for DeMille's latest movie. And Plucky winds up being a waiter and deals with all these different celebrities who are disgruntled, like Jack Nicholson, I think Clint Eastwood at one point. Hampton is dealing with being a valet and parking the Batmobile and the Star Trek Enterprise. And this leads to just a lot of fun, just zany fun. And you just get so many different cameos from so many different celebrities. Michael Keaton, he shows up as Batman in the Batmobile and then walks into the restaurant as Batman, but unzips the bat suit and then out walks Michael Keaton in a tuxedo. And there's just so many moments in this episode that I just love. It's Tiny Toon Adventures at its best because it's got all these pop culture references as well as this meta humor where it's breaking the fourth wall. There's a whole scene near the end where Plucky and Hampton go to Warner Brothers Studios and they're on the studio lot, and there's all these different gags that are tied into Warner Brothers, which kind of reminds you of the stuff that you saw in the finale of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And I even love the ending because Plucky somehow does wind up meeting the director despite everything that's going wrong. And the director's like, sorry, I already got that film made. It's called The Buster and Babs Story. And Plucky winds up getting his just desserts because now it's Buster and Babs who get the movie made and are these big stars. And it's all because he lied to them and tried to manipulate things. And it's just a perfect Plucky Duck story if you think about it, because that's what happens with Plucky. He's just so selfish that he just can't see straight. But yeah, I just love that episode. And it's not just nostalgia either. But that definitely is part of it, because that was the first one I remember watching when I was a kid. Episode 8 is called Journey to the Center of Acme Acres. This one's directed by Art Leonardi, featuring writing by Wayne Katz. This one is decent. This one is enjoyable, fun little watch. Deals with an earthquake. Montana Max is the cause of it because he's stealing gold from these gremlins who live inside the center of the earth. And so now the Tiny Toon gang have to team up to steal the gold away from Max and then give it back to the gremlins. It's a simple concept, but it works. And it's the first time you really feature Montana Max as the main antagonist. Episode 9 is called It's Buster Bunny Time. That one deals with 3 shorts, Bag That Bunny, Lifestyles of the Rich and Rotten, and the Anvil Chorus. Out of all 3 of them, I would say the best one is a parody of the Lifestyles of Rich and Famous, Lifestyles of the Rich and Rotten. You get Buster and Babs being a genuine dynamic duo in this, foiling a Montana Max's day and just messing with him and just being total trolls. Bag That Bunny. No thanks. The best part of that is Calamity Coyote because Elmira definitely isn't doing it for me. The Anvil Chorus, I like what they were trying to do here with the music and the classical music arrangements, but it's pretty forgettable. Episode 10 is called Stuff That Goes Bump in the Night. It's directed by Art Leonardi, featuring a script by Pamela Hickey, Dennis McCoy, Richard Mueller, Pat Alley, Ben Hurst, and Tom Rugger. It's kind of a horror anthology that has Buster and Babs trying to scare each other in between each short. It's got 3 shorts: Homewrecker, Thank You Very Much, and Easy Biter. Out of all 3, the best of the bunch for me is Homewrecker. Deals with Buster Bunny and Montana Max. Montana Max is trying to build this new mansion or this new house, and he's picked Buster's home as the spot where he's going to build it. So he's just messing with Buster and trying to just build this just gaudy, obnoxious house on top of Buster's home. Buster decides to mess with Montana Max's head by making Montana think that Buster is dead and that he's a ghost. And so now Buster is haunting and terrorizing Max. And then, of course, you find out a twist later that Buster is not dead and it's all just a big joke. But by that point, Max's new home has already been obliterated. So that one was fun, mainly because of the dynamic between Buster and Montana Max. Thank You Very Much is one of the more tolerable Elmira episodes because of the fact that you have this vampire who is now the one who is being tortured and the focus of Elmira's ire and her obsession, so to speak. And so there's a lot of fun little vampire gags throughout. Easy Biter is the weakest one. It doesn't match with the tone of the entire episode. It's a little too cute. Where Hampton is annoyed by this mosquito that keeps trying to bite him in the butt. But then he feels bad for the mosquito because the mosquito shows that he has a family. So then Hampton decides to give the mosquito a break. And then, of course, it ends with the whole mosquito family moving in and Hampton is just sleeping outside with the other mosquito. And you're like, okay, it's got a nice message to it and it's sweet, but it's very forgettable. And honestly, other than Homewrecker, it's not really one of the best episodes of the show. I would say the little bits where Buster and Babs are trying to scare each other were probably the most consistently fun parts of the episode. Number 11 is called Looking Out for the Little Guy, directed by Art Vitello, featuring a script by Nick Hollander, Jim Reardon, Pat Alley, Ben Hurst, and Tom Rugger. This one deals with 3 shorts again: Awful Orphan, The Re-Return of Toxic Revenger, and Dogbird Afternoon. The best one is The Re-Return of Toxic Revenger, where Plucky is the star, and Montana Max is the villain, and he steals Plucky's swamp in order to fill up his pool. And Plucky then takes on the guise of the Toxic Revenger, this superhero who's has this environmental focus. And there's just some fun bits of animation between Plucky and Montana Max, and I liked the two squaring off with one another, and I liked the Toxic Revenger character as well. It's a fun little parody of like Captain Planet or a hero along those lines. Awful Orphan is an awful short, one of my least favorite shorts out of the entire series, because not only do you have Elmira, who is excruciating, now you also have Little Sneezer, so it's just 2 of the worst, most annoying characters in the entire show in one segment. I mean, it was just so abhorrently awful and bad and cringe and hard to sit through. Dogbird Afternoon, Another one where Furball is an antagonist. This does not work. Why do they keep doing this? Furball's trying to get to these birds that are in a nest. Byron Bassett is his dog who's trying to keep Furball from getting to them. It doesn't do it for me. It doesn't work because Furball as an antagonist is a bad idea. It just does not work, period. Episode 12 is called Starting from Scratch, directed by Ken Boyer, featuring a script by Wayne Katz and Tom Rugger. This is just a parody of An American Tail. And this time around, it's with fleas. And Furball has this flea named Fleo who is separated from his family. And so now it's this musical and this adventure of Furball and the other Tiny Toons trying to reunite Fleo with his family. His family are in this other dog. And it's just there. Like, it's got his heart in the right place, and that definitely does go a long way, but the music isn't anything really that memorable, and it really does feel like it's a segment or just a short that is just intended for really young audiences. And if I want that kind of story, I'll just watch An American Tail again. Like, it didn't even feel like they parodied American Tail enough. Like, they were just like, oh, well, instead of mice, it's fleas, so that's enough. And I'm like, eh. But there were some good Furball moments in it. I will give the episode that. Episode 13 is called Hair Raising Night. It's directed by Art Vitello, featuring a script by Gordon Bresick and Charles Howell. This one deals with Buster Babs, Buster Babs, Plucky, and Hampton, and they team up, which is fun to see. It's fun to see them all together in one adventure. They try to stop this mad scientist named Dr. Gene Splicer, and his whole bit is that he splices genes. So he creates these just weird mutations of different animals that are meshed together. And it's a surprisingly dark episode, and it's one of my favorite standalone episodes of the show for that reason. And it has a good mix of silliness too, so it's not too dark. It has a lot of silliness and the goofy nature and a lot of stuff that you expect from a Tiny Toon Adventures episode, but it's just definitely one of the best because you get Buster Babs, Plucky, and Hampton all together, and then you have the gene splicing thing, which then really adds a unique element to it. Definitely one of the ones that I would recommend. Episode 14 is called Furball Follies. It's directed by Art Vitello, featuring a script by Tom Minton, Sherry Stoner, and Eddie Fitzgerald. This one features 3 more shorts. They're all linked together with Furball trying to find a place to live. But the 3 shorts are Canine Kitty, Aroma Amore, and Cross Country Kitty. And out of all of these, I would say Aroma Amore is the best one because it deals with Fifi the Fume, and I think she's just a really underrated Tiny Toon. And there's just some fun craziness that ensues with Furball, who has a stripe painted on his back by accident. And so Fifi thinks that he's a skunk, so then she's just chasing after him because she thinks that he's her next love. The other ones are just forgettable in one note. Canine Kitty, just Furball is taken into this house with this old couple who have bad vision because I think they lost their glasses. But the whole thing is that they hate cats, so Furball acts like a dog. And then he gets kicked out when they get their glasses. Just Cross Country Kitty, Furball goes to this other girl's house, Mary Melody. She has a pet named Sweetie Bird. They try to do the Sylvester the Cat and Tweety Bird thing. It doesn't work because yet again, Furball is not an antagonist. And that one was just a failure from the moment Furball showed up trying to be a villain. Like, I don't know why they kept doing it. It's just so wishy-washy, and at the same time, it's just not effective. It just doesn't work with Furball as a character. Furball is not a character that is effective in this kind of scenario, but they keep doing it, and I don't get it. I don't understand why. And Furball as a character is just underrated anyway, and seemed to get a raw deal. throughout the entirety of the show. Number 15 is the Acme Acre Zone. This one's directed by Ken Boyer, featuring script by Michael Reeves, Wayne Katz, Sherry Stoner, and Tom Minton. This is his Twilight Zone spoof. Buster is even doing a parody of Rod Serling at the beginning. You have 3 shorts, A Walk on the Flip Side, A Bacon Strip, and Sincerely Yours, Babs. Kind of a mixed bag. The best one to me is A Walk on the Flip Side, where Montana Max has this nightmare that he's turned into a rabbit. He then sees that everything's all turned upside down. Buster and Babs are now the millionaires who are living inside his house, and they're the ones that keep kicking him out when he's trying to get in. And they then call an animal shelter. He gets taken away. He wakes up from his nightmare, and you think that, okay, he's learned his lesson. But I like that it has an extra little twist there where it's like, no, he hasn't. He's Montana Max. He's a miserable jerk. So no, he doesn't learn anything. And so he still kicks Buster and Babs out into the cold. But then he gets his comeuppance because there's like thousands of rabbits that are now hidden inside his cabinets. A Bacon Strip, that one was just meh. Plucky and Hampton, they go to Montana Max's property. They sneak on there. They want to go into the pool. Plucky, he escapes scot-free, but Hampton is now having to run around without his clothes, and he's trying not to get embarrassed. This is one of those where you're like, eh. Sincerely Yours, Babs. That one was fun because you get to see Babs without a sense of humor, and she's now a total killjoy. And just the concept of it was interesting. Oh, let's use a machine and pull out Babs' sense of humor, and so her sense of humor then becomes its own entity, and it's up to Calamity Coyote and Hampton to try to capture her sense of humor and return it to her. Episode 16 is called Life in the 90s. This episode is directed by Rich Ahrens, featuring a script by Paul Dini, Bob Carew, Jim Reardon, Sherry Stoner, and Tom Rugger. And this is another one where you have a bunch of different segments, but because it's like life in the 90s, like there's a lot of really dated writing in this. Like the intro with Buster talking about how he's a 90s kid. But the shorts are Whining Out, Paper Trained, and Butt Out. I would say out of all of these, the best one is Paper Trained. Because a lot of the other shorts here, like Whining Out and Butt Out, they're just very kind of one note and bland. Paper Trained is fun because you have Buster once again going up against Montana Max, and he's trying to get subscription money from Max for the newspaper, and there's just a lot of fun little back and forths that happen between the two. Butt Out is very much a short that might as well have been written by the Surgeon General. And Whining Out, that one, it was fun to see Buster, Babs, Plucky, and Hampton together, but it was just a very generic script about, oh, they go to this fancy restaurant named Attitude, and then everybody's treating them poorly and like crap, and then they have to find different ways to try to get served, and then ultimately it backfires. Or this is one of those things where it's like, just didn't really do anything for me. Episode 17 is called Rock and Roar. This one is directed by Art Vitello and features writing by Cheryl Scarborough, Jim Reardon, and Katie Koosh. This is a really crappy episode. It deals with Buster Babs, Plucky, and Hampton. They're playing soccer. Buster kicks the soccer ball, falls down into a hole. Buster thinks that he finds the soccer ball, but it actually is a dinosaur egg. This T-Rex gets hatched. Buster adopts it, calls it Rover. Rover grows to giant big size and is destroying Acme Acres. And it's another one of those episodes that just relies way too much on a weak concept, and it just screams for kids and not in a good way. It doesn't help either. The animation quality is not very good. It's the start of a trend that I started to notice, where if you had the trifecta of poor animation quality, especially compared to most of the show, you were going to get bad writing. And then if you also had an episode that didn't have like multiple shorts and it was just like one story, then it was guaranteed to be terrible. If you had one story, bad animation, the writing was going to suck too. It was just a constant. There wasn't a single instance where that happened, where there was a single episode that had all of those three things not going for it that worked. The 18th episode is called Promise Her Anything, written by Ken Boyer, written by Paul Dini and Bob Carew. This is like a prom episode. Buster's asking Babs to the prom. He learns how to dance by watching a Bugs Bunny routine, but the routine is lame, but Bugs comes in and helps him out. Myra's trying to get Montana Max to fall in love with her, but he doesn't care about her because he's more into the human girls that Dizzy brings. I wasn't really that big on this episode. I get that it establishes the characters and provides a little depth to them, and they get to have their prom moment and whatever, but it wasn't very funny. It was mostly just boring. Episode number 19 is called Hair Today, Gone Tomorrow. Directed by Ken Boyer and Eddie Fitzgerald, featuring a script by Wayne Katz, Tom Rugger, Gordon Bresick, Charles M. Howell IV. This one deals with Buster being taken by Elmira. Buster tries to escape, but he winds up befriending these other pets, and then he tries to free them, and then it's up to Babs, Fifi, Furball, and Tyrone Turtle to save Buster. Another forgettable, just in one ear and out the eyeball type of episode. Really nothing special, really nothing to it. Episode 20, on the other hand, is a return to form, Cinemaniacs. This one's directed by Art Vitello and Ken Boyer, featuring a script by Sherry Stoner, Tom Minton, and Wayne Katz and Jim Reardon. This is a great companion piece to Hollywood Plucky. The wraparound deals with Buster and Babs doing theater hopping at a movie theater, and they're being chased around by the usher, Montana Max. And you get all these different parodies and spoofs of movies or television shows. So the first one is Super Babs. It's a spoof of the Superman film franchise, with Babs in the role of Superman and Montana Max as Wex Luthor. Super Babs, she is trying to stop Wex from destroying Acme Acres by using ink, which is really clever, and it just leads to some really fun animation. Duck Trek is the second short. It's a spoof of Star Trek with Plucky, Hampton, and Furball, and various other characters, different crew members. They land on a planet in search of a toupee for Plucky, but then they're chased by a hair monster, which I believe was featured in Duck Dodger's short. Then they manage to escape the clutches of the planet's hairs when Hampton apparently finds a way to make the planet worry so much that it goes bald. But the best one is Pasadena Jones. They saved the best for last here. It's a spoof of Indiana Jones with Buster as Indy, and Buster enters some secret temple to find the secret of life, and he's getting chased around by Montana Max, who's playing a take on Totes, or a typical sort of Nazi villain you would see in an Indiana Jones film. And there's just a lot of fun callbacks to Indiana Jones, and he finds out that the secret of life is actually friendship. So yeah, I would say that's definitely a winner